Hey, welcome back to the Fishbowl. I got Arlet, and I got Thor
Hello.
from Wargaming, and you guys are here to talk about one game in particular.
World of Tanks.
I mean,
The
come
game.
on,
Hello.
the game. Dun, da, da, da. And you brought with you a couple of things, not the least of which is some gameplay, which we'll get to in a minute. But we've got a cinematic trailer. Talk me through it real quick before we start.
Yeah, so War Stories is our new single-player campaign for World of Tanks, and these first few that we're releasing, that just released yesterday, are some alternative history missions. So you're going to see in this trailer some things where maybe history didn't go the way you remember it going.
Well,
Exactly.
moreover,
Absolutely.
let's talk about what you guys are doing here at Gamescom specifically. What we're going to see here in a moment. We'll talk about the
Sure.
trailer in a second. But moreover, what kind of announcements did we see? What is happening? Give me the deets.
Well, two big things for us when it comes to console. War Stories, like I said, it's the first single-player campaign and online co-op for World of Tanks. And then the big thing for Xbox fans out there, especially, is tournaments, which Arlette can talk about. She's the master of our tournaments.
Nice.
I definitely.
Arlen, I'm
Spot
very
on.
excited. You seem like you got an axe to grind, and I like that in a gamer. So I guess we can talk a little bit more about War Stories because this is a departure. I mean, this is a new kind of realm for you guys. What was the reaction when people found out?
Well, we actually kind of held this, the cards close to our chest. We didn't announce it until last week, and then it just released yesterday. So it wasn't anything. It was something that we really had to keep to ourselves, which is really hard to do because it was super exciting, and I just wanted to talk about it all the time. But it's sort of a different take on the game and not essentially the same thing that most of our players are used to. But it's set up in a way that if you play our multiplayer, you can play War Stories, and it's not going to affect the multiplayer game. It's still going to be, the multiplayers are our love, our
Bread
firstborn
and
child.
butter,
We will always
exactly.
love our multiplayer fans. But we wanted to give something to the console audience that was a little more unique and a little more console specific and a little homegrown. You know, we build the console product out of Chicago and Baltimore, so we wanted to show that we had some original narratives, storylines that we could tell with our game, and this is it. The first one is Brothers in Armor, and then we did Flashpoint Berlin, which both released last week. And they're alternate history campaigns where we take a certain point of history, and you know, if everyone was turning right, we say, what if they turn left, and then see where it goes from there.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, what do you think of the World of Tanks average fan?
Yeah.
Like, what has been their reaction to this announcement, to a campaign coming on board?
Yeah. Well, Arlette hangs with our console players in the forums all the time, so you would know. What are they like?
Well, it was a surprise because,
Yeah.
as you know, on World of Tanks PC, we don't have single players. So
Yeah.
when the console team decided to do this, they knew that it was going to be a big reaction. It's mainly because we've only catered to multiplayer, and of course we have the PvE missions for, you know, just standalone, but nothing concrete or substantial where a player can just go on its own on a different storyline. So the reviews have been fairly positive. Right now there's a huge demand on people trying to log in the queue to play War Stories right now. So
That's not bad.
That
always
is
a
a
good
great
thing,
problem
yeah.
to have, but definitely we want to push for more content in the future because we can see that the players are definitely enjoying it.
Fantastic. Well, hey, now we were just told actually that trailer is ready. So
wow,
now be
magic.
the time. Let's
They found the
roll it.
button.
Yes!
Press the button.
Push that button.
Day
Move that
can
bus.
change everything. One fall day in 1940, we knew Britain was impregnable, protected by the sea, and defended by brave souls on every clifftop. 24 hours later, all we could do was watch as the German forces took the coast and drove their tanks into the heart of the nation. When the blockade began in 1948, we thought the people of West Berlin would be safe. But the Soviets had other ideas. One December day is all it took for the fragile peace to shatter. And once again, the streets were filled with war and death. In 1962, we thought the Cuban Missile Crisis was a bluff. It was bravado, playground bullies flexing their muscles. No one would ever push the button. Then one day in October that year, someone did push it. An island paradise was turned into the epicenter of all-out thermonuclear war, threatening our very existence. These are our stories. Now, it's your turn.
Okay, not a bad trailer, I would say. That is the very definition of cinematic, by the way.
Nothing dramatic happened in that at all.
Nothing at all. So let's talk a little bit more about what we just saw. We were talking how people can actually play with doing co-op.
Yeah.
We've got challenge.
Yeah.
Talk to us more about those kind of mechanics.
So you, when you download the War Stories with our latest update that went out on Tuesday, it's free to play, just like World of Tanks. So these War Stories are going to come to you for free, which is awesome.
Yep.
You play through the War Stories, and each War Story has 3 chapters, and you progress through those chapters. It's kind of the same way you would in a typical World of Tanks match.
Yeah.
And the challenge of that gets harder and harder as you go through, and then once you complete that whole mission, that whole War Story, you unlock a challenge mode, and the challenge mode allows players to go back in and earn rewards for their World Tanks, where it kind of increases the challenge of what you're playing through, and whether it's trying to get through it in a certain amount of time, or keeping your team alive, or killing a certain amount of enemies. It's ways to make the experience more challenging and more rewarding for our players.
Nice. Okay, you know what? I know people want to see some of this, so let's start up that demo here. Talk us through what we're seeing here, Arlet.
Yeah, so this is Brothers in Armor, our first War Story, the first chapter of it, and each War Story has this really great
little comic book.
Yeah, it's like a motion comic cinematic that goes in between each chapter. And
what was the idea behind that, out of curiosity?
We did a
comic book series for World of Tanks last year with Dark Horse Comics, and we had a lot of success with that, and it was our first sort of experience of getting an idea of, can we build a narrative world to this game about these awesome tanks shooting each other? And it turns out you can, and it's really a fun thing to do. So that was sort of the inspiration for where we came up with this, and we said, well, let's do these comic book styles of these intros, and each War Story that we do will have a different comic book artist working on the artwork. So you're going to get different styles and a different sense of perspective for each story that's told. So it's all going to have its own sort of style.
Well, it's beautiful to look at just even now here in these opening credits.
Yeah, so this is Brothers in Armor is the first one. It sort of acts as a training mission for players. If you haven't ever gotten into World Tanks in multiplayer, this gives you a sense of how the tanks handle, how the guns work, strategy, that sort of thing. So it gives you a sense of, gets you comfortable with the game. And it's set in the Battle of Romania, you're seeing here, where the U.S. sent over a bunch of Lend-Lease M4 Shermans, and we sent over these American tanks for the Soviets to use. And in our story, we also sent over an American commander who's teaching these Soviet crews how to use this armor. I mean, obviously, the Soviets know their way around tanks really well, but, this new tank from the U.S., they might, they're looking for a gauge up here when we hide it down here. When you rent a car, you can never find a way to put the gas in it. Exactly. So what if every time you rented a car, an American crewman came up there from World War II, and he's like, I don't even know what this is. I know what tanks are. So it's there. He's there to kind of help the crew get used to these tanks, and also to get you used to the game.
Excellent. So is it something where if you have not been a World of Tanks fan yet, or maybe you haven't gotten in there yet, maybe that hasn't been your thing, is this something for the campaign lover and all of us? Is that would you say this is a gateway game?
It really is. It really is. It's the type of thing that if you've never picked up World Tanks before, you're going to get into the War Stories, and you're going to get that single player experience and for free, obviously, and you're going to be able to get yourself comfortable with how our game works, how the tanks drive,
how you customize tanks, how you customize your crews, and all the different options that are available in multiplayer are going to be things that you can do in War Stories 2, just to get you ready if you then decide to go over to multiplayer. So if you decide to never go to multiplayer, which we've seen a lot of players that in the earlier PvE stuff that we've done, they just play PvE only, and they're having a great time. But now we're giving them more content, and then also the people that are new to the game completely, something that can get them comfortable with how the game works, and then they can jump into multiplayer if they want to.
Now, you mentioned customization here. Do we have can we talk about both of your favorite tanks? Do you have one? Is it like asking for your favorite child? I don't know.
No, that's like the most common question of all time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, mine would be Soviet KB1.
Yeah, I think we know each other's tanks at this point.
And mine is the
Snakebite Cromwell, which was the hero tank from our comic book series. So it was a special tank from the comic book series that we put in the game, and it was the first time we did that sort of integration between a comic that we created and a tank in game. So it holds a place in my heart.
I was going to say, it seems like just such a natural progression as soon as you find those stories to then create this campaign mode. And by the way, not for nothing, but the look and feel of this, I mean, just even looking at the grass and how the wind goes through it
we take pride in our grass. We take pride in our grass. I'll tell you that right now.
That is something that we're like, okay, this is where it's at.
This is running on Xbox One X, yes? Right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so
it's launching with Xbox One X in November, which we're super excited about. We have been I've been working on our trailers and a lot of the other assets that we've been doing for the launch of War Stories, and I've been collecting it all off Xbox One X, and it looks good.
I was going to say, let's talk about the experience here on the One X, and even just what you can see. Arlette, you just chimed up right there. Talk to me about the experience here.
Well, the way that we build the tanks, when we started, go for it. Yeah, there you go. I wasn't even paying attention because the focus is just so big. So when we started developing World of Tanks, we knew that 4K was pretty much what we were going to go. So now that we have the ability to have the textures already in 4K, we didn't have to do anything because they were already in the game.
Live TV.
Yes, so it has certainly been a pleasure seeing these tanks live. All the textures have been developed for 4K from the depth, so it starts from the model all the way to the exterior of the tank. So we have better shading. 4K allows for loading times and just the models of the tanks overall, as well as nature. Any object that we have in game just looks absolutely amazing. The game was already gorgeous on 360 and on Xbox One, but now it's just outrageously insane. The amount of detail that the artists and the engineers and the design team have placed on the game on itself, it's unbelievable.
We do every blade of grass individually.
There's so much detail that it is distracting at times, I can say, because you're driving the tank and then all of a sudden it's like, what a beautiful tree.
What a lovely tree. And then you're gone.
Yeah, and then you're like, whoops, oh, sorry.
It definitely seems like an immersive experience, to be sure. Now, in terms, I'm just absolutely enthralled by the going for the comic, coming into your campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, but it doesn't, it's one of those things, I gotta ask, how did the idea of the comic even become a thing? Is it something that you've heard from the community that they wanted this kind of campaign, that they wanted more story, they wanted this kind of
I think it's something that
or was it like a surprise to you guys that maybe there was an excitement around it?
What it really came from was when we started our early
PvE content
last year, we saw, even when we
first released it, it was pretty bare bones, but people were playing it and they liked it. And then we started introducing special modes for holidays where we had one called Hunt the Krampus, and this big monster Krampus tank, and you have to go and fight him and all his minions, and it was essentially like a boss battle, but it had like a little bit of a story element to it, and everyone's like, you have to bring this back. And we just kept seeing every time we dipped our toe in this direction, the reaction from our community was like, this is awesome, this is great. And And before we decided that this is something we wanted to commit to, we were seeing things coming in from how our PvE was working and with our co-op, and everyone was in there, and we had a lot of people playing these PvE missions co-op, so we if we're going to do this, we have to do it so people can play together.
Yep.
It's part of what makes World of Tanks what it is. It's a team game. It's about how you play with your friends. And so that's, part of the reason why arenas is so important to us and why co-op was so important to us for War Stories.
Right from the get-go.
But the comics really came out of just the idea of there's an audience for this narrative. They want it, and we want to tell these stories. We had just come off of the comic book series with Dark Horse. We had Garth Ennis, who's the writer of Preacher, was the writer for our comic book series. And so I was so excited that was a thing. And I was like, we can bring this high caliber content to World of Tanks, and that's really kind of where it spun out of. And we just knew that with the audience that we were seeing from our PvE stuff and the reception that we had from the comic book series, it sort of just merged. It just naturally
made sense.
Yeah, exactly.
It made sense. So when you guys describe War Stories to the casual passerby, how does that manifest itself? How do you explain that, especially in the world of War of Tanks?
Yeah, well, it's new. It's a new idea for World of Tanks. None of our other titles have a single-player campaign like this. So, it's history stories, alternative history, and fantasy campaigns that we're working on that can, deliver the same great gameplay that you would get on multiplayer, but from a single-player or online co-op perspective. And with the cinematics that we're throwing in there and just all the quality and love that we're giving these war stories, it's a whole different experience while still feeling very familiar. And I think that our multiplayer fans are going to see what comes from War Stories, and I think they'll find something in there that will be rewarding to them. And for our new players or players that just enjoy single player stuff, this is what they're gonna love.
Now, I know we've talked about we're on this campaign. There's a couple of. Do we have a total number of campaigns at this point, or?
We launched yesterday with 2, Brothers in Armor and Flashpoint Roulette.
Yep.
We have 2 more coming by the end of the year.
Yeah.
They're both alternate history stories. Operation Sea Lion is 1, and Kennedy's War. You kind of got a glimpse of what those are like. Oh, thank you.
Arlet's taking away.
I can't talk and drive.
I do. I think it's worth mentioning before you continue. It's worth mentioning that right now they're both so engaged in this game that it's really funny to try and ask them questions because it's just that immersive.
Well,
I love it.
I'm sure everybody that comes on here, developers that work for games, they get paid to play these games, and it's the best job they've ever had, and it's ours too. I mean, we love this. I play this game all the time, and I'm loving this War Stories because now, if I do something really bad, unless I'm doing it right now on this live stream, no one has to see it. I can just live it out and regret and learn from my mistakes, that kind of thing, which I think is part of what War Stories is going to do for a lot of players. The intimidation of getting into big online multiplayer games, it exists, and World of Tanks is a game that I think it exists for, especially because when you get into a match, you go out there, and if you're not familiar with what you're doing, you go in guns blazing, which is, I still do, and you get killed, and that's the match. The match is over.
Yeah.
There's no respawning like typical shooters. So you really have to learn from your mistakes and think about what you're doing. It's more about strategy, and War Stories is a place where you're going to be able to build that strategy within a narrative context of the story.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, Arlette, I see you got one in your sights. No pressure,
That guy
but
never
you're
had a
alive
chance.
right now.
There it is. Watch.
I'm going to need you to...
Boom.
Oh, God, that was
called it.
satisfying. No,
I'm trying. I'm trying. There you go. He's just stationary there.
He's camping. Come on, get out of there.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That was
so
funny.
this is the first mission of the first War Story.
Yeah.
So this is the good example of what it is about the War Stories that acts as a training tool for new players. But as soon as this one is done, you really have to, if you're a new player, pay attention to what you're learning in this one.
Difficult.
But for existing players, the difficulty for this ramps up for each chapter following that. And then the same with our next war story, Flashpoint Berlin. It's like you're thrown into the action, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun, yeah.
So y'all have been at Gamescom for the last couple of days. You've gotten the chance to have people like in front of you, seeing and playing and reacting. What's been the reaction here on the floor?
From what I've seen, it's mostly been the shock
that we were able to keep this a secret.
Yes.
Yeah,
we're all shocked about that, by the way.
There's a single-player campaign to World of Tanks, and you just announced it last week.
And it's coming. It's out now.
And we do live streams every week, and we're engaging with the community all the time, especially in our forums and online. And I mean, the level of like dedication that we had to hold this down and let it out.
We tried so hard. As a developer, you have all this content that you're planning for the future, but keeping it secret from the community, sometimes it's painful.
We were so happy when we were finally able to announce this. I was like, guys, we're talking about war stories today on the show. Like, no, really? It's like, yes, finally, we're doing it. And I mean, it was so great. And the fans were sort of just like,
they had passed their first
it came out of left field in like the best way possible.
Yeah. Arlet, how are you doing?
Oh, yeah.
Victory! Victory!
Impressed?
13 kills. Yeah. kills.
Yeah. Look at you doing the thing.
And what's that?
Achievement
You got yourself an achievement.
Guys, I love this.
Whoever's game
account this is,
you're welcome. All right, you did him a favor.
Well, let's talk about, see where people can follow that stream you were just talking about, how people get their hands on it. Let's give us all the deets now here at the end.
World Takes, free to play on Xbox. Download it now. War Stories is there, waiting for you.
Just waiting.
Yeah. World Tanks console on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, depending on what region you're in.
And is that where we can see you guys streaming?
Yeah.
On World Tanks on Facebook, and we also have the weekly by Twitch.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay. Man, you guys, thank you so much for being here and
you.
showing us.
Thank you for having us. This is great.
Really
thank you to everybody out there watching. I hope you're having a good time watching Gamescom.
Exactly.
We're having a good time talking about
it.
Oh,
yes, we are.
Best of both worlds.
These guys need to come back day after day after day after day. But I'm going to let you guys.
We live here now.
It's true. I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy the rest of Gamescom.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to toss it over to the floor now.